we're gathered here today on the occupied land of the Ho-Chunk who have stewarded this land for generations. We strive to be accountable by acknowledging this history and cultivating respect in our relationship with our Indigenous neighbors in this land. We implore our fellow settlers to learn more about the history, culture, and tribal sovereignty of the federally recognized tribes and bands located in this state. Thank you all for being here today. I think just us all coming here is a very great reminder of how important it is, especially in our current political climate, that we remember to treat each other and also the land with care and respect.
It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the library today. Thank you all so much for making the trek out here on this very snowy morning. My name is Beth Van Kuren, and I am the Programming and Outreach Librarian here at the Carnegie-Shadi Memorial Public Library. I've worked over the past several months to plan this event alongside Marcy Hoffaker, Emily Reno, Shannon Cowan, Joan Wheeler, and Mindy McGuire, and all of us are so proud of the event we've put together for you today. Baraboo Reads is a community-wide initiative aiming to foster inclusivity by having community members read and discuss a selected book, promote shared experiences, learn and dialogue around important themes like disability, immigration, and Indigenous history and learn experiences. We are so excited to discuss the Seed Keeper and to hear from our incredible speaker. Jessika is a Ho-Chunk Nation tribal member from Baraboo, Wisconsin, and a member of the Deer Clan. Her life work is growing and protecting our seed relatives and regenerating the soils of our earth. This life work has taken shape in many places and communities, including with Dream of Wild Health, as the Agricultural Division Manager for her nation, and as a garden mentor within her nation's organic community gardens. Jessika is a U.S. Army combat veteran and completed a veteran-to-farmer training program at the Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania. She recently served in the legislative branch of the Ho-Chunk Nation. Before we get started, I'd also like to thank our sponsors, the Carnegie-Shadi Memorial Public Library, the Baraboo Acts Coalition, the Baraboo Area Literacy Council, the Village Booksmith, Sauk County Master Gardeners Association, the Ho-Chunk Nation, and Four Elements for their hard work and support of this event.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you all for braving the roads today to come out and talk about seeds. So I'm honored to be with you all today. I'm so grateful to be able to come home to Baraboo whenever I can. So it's a nice welcome change. I currently reside in Hudson, Wisconsin, which is as far west as you can go on I-94. And so we've had turbulent times there. And so it's nice to be able to get away and remember what's important. The Seed Keeper novel, a little backstory. Diane Wilson, who's the author of the novel, and many others, is a good friend of mine. We started working together through the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network, and part of that was just building seed resiliency within Native communities around the country. We also looked at different ways to further expand rights of nature, looking at seed sovereignty within each community, and also seed rematriation. Does anyone here know what seed rematriation is? Thank you, Marcy. So seed rematriation, you can see on the tables or toward the front of the room, we do have some seeds laid out. And so seed rematriation is taking seed back or reclaiming seed from different institutions, whether those are universities, museums, cultural centers, and bringing them back to their native communities. Has anyone heard of the boarding school era? So very similar, during that period of time, it was, kill the Indian and save the man. And there was a big push from museums across the country and different anthropologists who were trying to collect everything they possibly could for Native Americans and gather what they could before we became extinct. So it's always hard to think about stuff like that because it's actually not that far back in our history. That was happening in the early 1900s. And then even, there are still boarding schools open to this day. Part of that rematriation work is what was happening to our people, to our neighbors, to our family, to our communities, is that they were being stripped from their families, from their culture, from their language, from their foods, everything that made them who they are. And what happened was the same things were happening to our seeds. They were being stripped away from their families and communities and ceremony and started growing in places that they were not treated with the same amount of respect as they were in Native communities. And the seeds are not just a thing, or my work with the USDA, calling them germplasm. They're living beings. And it doesn't matter if it's corn, if it's tomatoes, if it's carrots. Every single seed that we put into the ground sacrifices themselves for us. Not only for human beings, but our wildlife, our insect relatives, and all living beings, including the soil. When we work with our seeds, as also mentioned within the novel, of moving them around like they're infants. And so my time working with Dream of Wild Health, I teased Diane about this. So Diane had recruited me to come work for her at Dream of Wild Health. So I moved, uprooted, went to go work for her. And as I signed on, she said, I'm retiring because, right? Because I want to finish this novel. And I was like, okay, at least she's not moving. Like, I know she's still, just an arm's reach away. I felt a little slighted. I was hoping to really work closely with her. But it's okay. Everything happens for a reason. But the novel that she was working on and trying to finish is the one that many of you have brought with you today. And to know somebody who also is doing everything that they can within their power to be able to ensure that our seeds are not only coming home from these different institutions and going back to their communities, it's also about expanding that insight. Oh, Brenda, there's some space here at the front table. Putting you on the spot. To think of other people who are also trying to expand the consciousness, regardless of where we come from, where our ancestors come from, the languages they spoke, we all were seed keepers. We were all seed stewards because that's how we fed ourselves. Before World War II, before the expansion of grocery stores, we counted on our own green thumbs or brown thumbs to be able to grow what we needed to sustain our families. And part of that was also the seed saving aspect, until our seed companies started making their leaps and bounds, to be where they're at today. So the seed rematriation, about bringing those seeds home, has been a journey. I know the first time I had encountered a seed was 2018 that was misnamed. It was called the American Indian squash. And for those of you familiar with Native nations around America, there are more than 500 of us. And so it's really difficult to narrow it down of who exactly that squash was cared for. And squash is something that was indigenous to the Americas. So it was growing lovingly in South and Central America before it was taken on ships and gone to different places around the world. It was a 2-day event at this particular nonprofit seed house. And both Diane and I could only stay for the first day. And we both left seeing the 25 names of the varieties that were being grown that year. And we're like, well, there's not a Ho-Chunk seed and there's not a Dakota seed, but it was really good to be here with other tribes who were able to reconnect with their rematriated seed, or the seed that was going to be coming out of that seed house and back home with them. And the next day I got a text from one of my good friends, Rowan White, who was also one of my mentors when I first started out on this path. And she's like, the one squash says that they think it's Winnebago. And for those of you familiar with Ho-Chunk history, we were referred to as the Wisconsin Winnebago until 1994, when we created our own constitution and reclaimed our traditional name, Ho-Chunk. And she said somebody in the 1980s had grown that particular seed and said, this looks exactly like the Winnebago squash found in Oscar Will's seed catalog. Does anyone here know who Oscar Will is? Okay. Oscar Will, a big seed guy, had a seed catalog back in the 19-teens. And in 1927, there was a picture of the Winnebago squash, and it was collected from our Winnebago relatives down in Nebraska, and that's where our federal reservation is located. And they had shared the seed with a dentist who was making his rounds through the reservation, not only for Winnebago, but also the Omaha, and they had shared seed with them. And so he was a dentist, and was also an anthropologist in his free time. I'm not sure how much free time he had, but he eventually shared that seed with the Oscar Will Seed House, and that seed stayed with the Oscar Will Seed House until the 1930s, when that seed was, when the Oscar Will Seed House was no more, Oscar Will was no more. His son took over, and all of those seeds went to the USDA under Pioneer Seed Company. So the USDA continues to grow seeds every single year from seeds across the country. There's different plant stations that focus on different seed groups. And I've been invited to the one that they've done corn at. And it was one of the most heartbreaking days I've experienced. And so I want you to imagine we're standing outside on this side of the building, and we're looking down 4th Street, and we can look at the stop sign and beyond, and that's how big this room is, this freezer. And it has shelves, just like a library. It's got the rolling shelves to make space for everything else. And from floor to ceiling are jars. And each of those rows are filled, and those are corn seeds. And looking at the names, some of those tribes no longer exist, or they're no longer recognized. Other tribes are still very much alive and well, and trying to reclaim their foods. And they took us into the sorting room. And so, again, it was that iteration, that continued knowing of, they knew there was a group of Indigenous people coming through to look at the lab, visit the seeds, and there were seeds on the ground. And I remember myself and this Oneida seed keeper, we started picking up the seeds, and they're like, oh, we can't use those are contaminated. And I'm like, oh my God, but it's still a living being. And that was my initial sort of jump start or shock, that I'm like, these seeds are not safe here. They're not respected here. Even though these people are plant people as well, there's a whole different set of rules that they have to follow that are not in alignment with my personal values and cultural values. And the rematriation work, I know, is also considered, broken-hearted seeds planted by broken-hearted people, and not wanting to continue that same cycle. And I'm so not trying to make it to be your Debbie Downer today, but it's incredibly heartbreaking because there are seeds that I've worked with that don't trust humans. They've been mistreated for so long that we have a lot of work to do to show them again that we're worthy of being able to take care of them. The seed that I have on the tables, so now with all of that said, and thinking about our nursery and also being good human stewards, and despite, which creation story or either religious or spiritual, many, or the thought of evolution, we were the last ones here. Our plant relatives are older than we are. They came before we were, and they definitely have a whole lot of generosity that we should all strive to be able to achieve. And they get to live that whole cycle generally in one growing season, where it takes us many, many years. Many, many years to master that. The seed was initially one cob that was given to me 3 years ago, and this cob was living its best life down in Oklahoma. So once upon a time, Ho-Chunks had shared seed with this Cherokee seed keeper, and he had grown it, continued to steward it, but he also stewarded more than 1,700 varieties of corn. And amazing. And so he did the very best that he could. And when he passed, half of his collection went to some Indigenous seed keepers, and the other half went to that nonprofit seed house that I had alluded to before. And one day, an Oneida seed keeper said, "I have something for you." And she gave me this cob of what looked like chocolate brown corn with a little bit of orange. And she's like, "This one came out of that collection. This one was grown last year in New York, and now it's home." And so there are so many different ways that this particular variety has expressed herself and continues to express herself. And so what I'm going to ask some of you, not everybody, or if people want to take turns, there are 3 trays. And you'll notice on one of the cobs, it'll be the very bottom or the shank where the cob attaches to the plant. That portion is for the food or for the people. The middle portion of the cob is for the seed. And so that's where your seed will continue to come from. And if you think about the pollination cycle of corn, and maybe you have other corn growing nearby, that's going to be your most solid time of that same variety of corn pollen flying, and it'll be the most true to type. And then there's also the tip of the cob, and I don't know how many people have opened an organic corn sweet cob, or cob of sweet corn, excuse me. And maybe you see the little bugs trying to find their way into the cob, but that is for our wildlife. And so when you do see that, it's not only a welcome to see that your produce was grown organically, because the animals are able to eat it without getting sick, but they're also coming to get what's rightfully theirs. And so if you would like, there are some full cobs intact, and if you can take part of the tip to go back into the cob with the tip revealed, the middle for the seed, and the bottom of the shank or the cob for the food. And so the food that comes out of the harvest that I grow either go back to the community, they go back to creating food access for people, because these are cobs of corn that you can go to the local store and buy your decorative corn, but that food or that corn is actually food, and can be nixtamalized or treated in different ways to be able to make it accessible, or the nutrients released and accessible for human consumption. And that was part of the Indigenous knowledge that did not go back on, the different ships going back east across the Atlantic, where corn seemed to be a food that the poor could eat and live off of, until some of the poor folks in Italy were getting sick and poisoned from the corn, because the corn seed did not come with the knowledge to be able to take care of it. And so there's a process called nixtamalization, and that creates, some of that corn and turns it into hominy. And we're probably all familiar with hominy, or somewhat familiar. So there's so many beautiful things that are corn. I'm speaking about corn because that's who's with us today, but so many different ways that we can reconnect to our foods, reconnect to our seeds, and truly benefit from having a relationship with them, but also in a way to nourish them more than just enjoying a cob of sweet corn in the summer. Yeah, don't be shy. There is going to be some corn that will jump. So if you can just make sure that if they fall, they find their way back into one of the containers. But yeah, they're just as excited. I'm sure they get bored with just me, so please, So I continue to speak about the rematriation because, within the novel, there are all of these different stories woven together through time. And it's all about, not only the willow basket of being gifted those seeds by one of the characters, but also everything that goes along with it through the seasons and through the years, and how all of that is shared matrilineal, or matrilineally, as the Dakota are a matrilineal nation. And so, there are many nations across the country who also believe that the seeds are a woman's bundle of responsibility. And if you think about it as human beings, when women are born, we are gifted with our own 2 little seed bundles that will potentially give life to another. And we too are called seed carriers, which is another word for seed keeper. Rematriation is not only the human connection or reconnecting to our foods and our culture, but it's also about doing the right thing. I know during my time at Dream of Wild Health, I did work with some of our youth who were part of the foster system, or were in foster care, and seeing the parts of us that maybe are a little shaken up, or cracked or smudged, and being able to find something to give you hope again. Many of you here today are plant people. Same here, I'd rather be planting than peopling. But thinking about everything that you do, and of course it's very different. I'm human, things happen, summer happens, weeds happen, all of those things where, our best intentions aren't always fully expressed on the middle of an August day. But then it's okay, this is what I can do. and trying to be the very best parents that we can be to every single crop that we're growing with. And plants are very forgiving. For those of you who do work with them, like I think a lot of times they have a whole lot of pity on us. But then that's part of like the whole getting into like everything stops outside of the garden. And this is an opportunity for, maybe that's your church, maybe that's your sanctuary, maybe that's your refuge. It can be all of those things, and it can also grow food. But the brokenness, I think, is something that we can all relate to. We've all had experiences through our life that maybe we're still trying to heal through, or maybe something that we want to think about further down the road. And I know for me, it was initially I did not find our seeds. I feel that our seeds found me. And I, went because I was going to go fix, our American food system. So I was like, I'm going to go learn to be a farmer. And I'm just going to fix it. And then it was, okay, well, I can do this. And it's like, you know what? Nobody cares. Like, so what can I do in my small sphere of influence to be able to do something different? And it was taking care of the soil, taking care of the earth. It was trying to recreate the soil of when those plants first were growing here. And of course, there's not a whole lot of science that can be replicated. I'm just going to do the very best I can to give them the prettiest nursery, the best foods to be nourished by. And then however I take care of the earth will take care of me, and take care of all of us. And it's one of those things too, where we're trying to fix that broken relationship with the earth. And I totally don't, I'm not pointing the finger, like we as a species have a lot of work to do, and a lot of things to undo, and also fix. And it's not just the hope of being able to fix it for ourselves, that we might be able to see the benefits in a growing season or two, but it's about who's coming behind us. And so I know there's a couple little ones here with us today. It's what kind of other problems are going to have snowballed that they're going to have to face, let alone having to fix the soil or the water that they're using to grow their plants with. I am not old. And maybe I'm just kidding myself. I am not old, but I know that when I was young, things seemed a whole lot different. To even think about the weather that we're having. And I know, like I'll follow it, just keeping an eye on the USDA hardiness zone. Technically I live north of here, so I should be colder. But my grow zone changed. It got hotter. And it's knowing how all of those changes are going to continue to impact us, not only as humans, but also the food system that we've come to depend on. Part of the work that's so important with seed keeping and seed saving is that every time we put those seeds in the ground, they become even more resilient to climate chaos. And so the first year that I did grow this variety, we had a lot of precipitation. And I could tell that the plants weren't totally used to it because they had been growing in Oklahoma and they were used to different conditions, but they still thrived. They still made the best of it. And then the next year, it was really dry and we had drought-like conditions. And I do not water my plants. I will water them if it's like, okay, they're really hurting, I have to irrigate or I will lose a crop. But I've done so much work on my soil where I grow at home that I don't have to water. And so getting, like last year, I watered twice. The year before that, I watered, I think 3 times. But really trying to do my best as building up the soil to create a better home and sort of keep human interaction out of the whole beautiful relationship that our seeds have with the earth. And it's not easy, but it's also not impossible. There's small ways that we can all change our relationship. Small ways we can all change our relationship with not only the earth that we steward, but as well as the seeds that we take care of. Part of the novel that's really, I read it maybe like 5 years ago. Luckily, Diane may have abandoned me at Dream of Wild Health, but she made sure I got a copy before it was released. And so, the part that, I think it's interesting to like revisit things that we've already learned and how there's a different piece of that potentially comes back or comes up in different ways. And I was like, well, I got nothing else to do but watch snow or rain fly on my drive down here. So I was like, I'll just do the audiobook and sort of just listen along or keep myself entertained. And it was to think about the winter. In the story of the part in the 1800s, God, now I can't even think of her name. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? Yeah. Marie? Thank you. So thinking of all of those different things that she had experienced in her life and how, she wanted to be able to share that with the next generation so they understood what was happening and sort of maybe more behind the scenes look at the things that she had lived through and experienced that, she talked about that long winter and how the long winter, there was, something that she had seen that she thought nobody would ever see again. And then it manifested in this whole different way, but still the same feelings attached to it, the same traumas, and the same necessary healing to go through and come out the other side. And I thought about that, again, because I'm not very old. I thought about all of the different winters that we continue to face as a species, as a community, as a state, as women, and no offense to the gentleman with us today, but just thinking of all of those things and how every time we think that we've beaten something, it comes back in a different way. And I'm still, I apologize, I'm still a little shaken by what's happening, not only as an observer, as a mentor, but when COVID happened, it was, we have to keep our doors open. We have way too many people that we need to feed, and grocery stores are closing. And so I changed the entire way we farmed at Dream of Wild Health and went bio-intensive. I'm like, we've been building up the soil here. We have to try it. And so we more than doubled our food production for that particular year because we had a lot of people counting on us. And shortly after, the stay-at-home order had happened, was the murder of George Floyd. And then more more businesses were closing, specifically within the Native American corridor of Minneapolis. And I wasn't scared. It was, we all have a job to do. We all need to take care of ourselves to take care of each other, and we're gonna get through this. And when I first saw the footage, especially as a veteran who's gone to war in Baghdad and Kabul, that it's like there is zero training, there are zero rules of engagement, there is no escalation of force or de-escalation of force. And I thought, I have to do something. You know, where many of those things are happening are blocks away from where we pick up kids to come out to the farm. And so, you know, for Dream of Wild Health, I guess I didn't really elaborate on this. It's an urban farm program for Native youth to come out of the city of Minneapolis and St. Paul, come out to the farm for green space. They learn how to grow food. They learn how to prepare those foods for their peers during the summer. And then we also do marketing. They even have different programs to add value-added products, and even Jane had come up to give us graciously came up to give a class on, you know, just thinking of other value-added products that a farm can build to not only produce revenue, but also to take care of more people in different ways. And knowing that kids who have no place else to go are stuck there, and feeling completely helpless as to how to take care of them, how to find ways to support them, and all of those things. I did go into the community, and unfortunately I wanted to keep that a secret, but somebody narked on me to my mom, so my mom found out. But I felt the call to go and just be in community. And, you know, I saw people that I knew, people that knew me as just a farmer, and all of those things, and it was something we all needed. You know, like I needed to know people were okay, and as much as I didn't feel safe, and still don't, it was, we can all be scared together. And hearing the different concerns coming from the community, the only thing I could think of was, how are we going to feed people? I had taken a sabbatical, and so I no longer work at Dream of Wild Health. I just work on my own farm and doing my own thing. And I thought, how are we going to support each other? And it's not about people looking for handouts or things like that, but it's also something that maybe we're a few hours away, or I guess maybe right even in the middle between Minneapolis and Chicago, but something we also need to consider. You know, like, how are we going to take care of one another during turbulent times? And, you know, I think of, you know, like, did we not learn our lesson in COVID? Or, you know, like thinking of all of those different things that happen, that it's like, maybe we just didn't learn our lesson and this is happening again. And it's a horrible, dark way to think about it. But it's, what did I not do last time that I need to do now? And I'm hoping that's a seed I can plant with you all today of, you know, it's not just about the people in your home or your extended family, it's about community. You know, like, how can we get back to the idea of, you know, a village concept of being able to help take care of each other. And I know that may sound very radical, you know, and I'm sure there's probably a few people that are like, you know what, I'll grow zucchini for everyone. But, you know, thinking of ways that we can be in service to each other, because we all need that. We all need that optimism renewed, that things are worth living, things are worth fighting for, and not just, somewhere hours away or hundreds of miles away from here. It's very much affecting all of us in different ways. And so what can we do now to be good neighbors? And I'm hoping this novel opened your eyes or broadened your horizon to thinking of how things have been done in the not so distant past that we could potentially make space for and bring back again in a time that we truly need it. Whew. Have I rambled enough? All right, and I will, turn it over. I think we've got a couple small group discussions that we'll be doing, maybe a little bit of seed work too. I'm not going to test you on, what's on page 173 of the book, but, I'm more than happy. I will do my very best to answer your questions about the novel. More than happy to help, and I think I'll be floating around. So thank you very much.
What is your opinion about creating seed banks?
That's a great question. And so I think for maybe a decolonized approach on seed banks or seed vaults are insinuating that not everybody has access to them. And so even the seed bundle that I cared for at Dreamwald Health, I referred to our seed vault or bank as a seed sanctuary. It's a place where seeds could come, they could grow, and then they can go when they're ready to go. And wanted to keep that mind frame moving forward with them. And so I still think of it that way in the seed bundles that I've inherited and that I continue to grow myself, is that all I'm doing is trying to do my part and be able to give that to whoever is coming behind me. The other thing I'll mention, going into those different museums or institutions and seeing jars of seeds or containers of seeds, and being away from human touch is the most dangerous place for a seed is in a jar on a shelf somewhere. And the safest place is in the hands of many growers. And so knowing that, I'm doing my part, but I also have other trusted growers that I work with, that we can both grow the same seed and share that harvest together at the end of the year. So it's more of that living preservation versus this is something pretty I'm gonna put in a jar and be part of my home. Yeah.
You mentioned that you've been working on improving soil health on your land. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing to improve your soil health?
For sure. I used to, I referred to myself as a mother ducker. So I used to have a flock of Anaconda ducks as well as Cayuga ducks. And so, I'm a micro farm, or I'm less than 5 acres. So it was trying to replicate, livestock into the whole ecosystem there. So part of it was using their bedding, which I have used into my flower beds, or have just recently incorporated into my flower beds. I no longer have ducks. But I use cover crops, I've used fish emulsion, I've used, mostly that. And I have one garden that has just always been no-till. I've had other ones that I've started tilling, worked it to a point, and now it's, different, like daikon radishes, where it's like, okay, I'm helping break up any of that compaction. I also have those pockets of decomposing matter, and then also food. So there's, lots of different ways to look at it. in the short amount of time of the land that I've been stewarding in Hudson, there have been, I guess maybe the point of being able to do the right thing, like I saw katydids, or I've seen different insects sort of come back onto the landscape. And that to me is telling me I'm on the right path. You know, I'm not doing a monoculture. I've got hundreds of different flowers and plants and indigenous seeds that are growing, but also non-indigenous seeds that grow. And so it's all about diversity. Even for, you know, I guess even as humans, like everything in moderation, it's the same thing with our soil. So I've tried this, now I'm gonna try this, but crop rotations, good Lord, anything. You know, I learned how to be a farmer at the Rodale Institute, you know, with their claim to fame of being the origin of organic agriculture, even though that's how we've always farmed. So, you know, it was learning all of those different things, including biochar, or I'll burn different gardens to have that. If it's an area I can't burn, I replicate that with adding charcoal from other spaces on the farm. But there's so many ways to take care of the land, and you can see how much happier the earth is by just looking at the plants that are left in the wake. So I think a lot of those things is just really giving it a try. Or raised agriculture like hugelkultures. For anyone who's grown popcorn, you know, popcorn is like a 4-foot tall plant. But I put that in a hugelkulture, and then I had 10-foot tall popcorn. So yeah, it's all about how you're taking care of the earth and how you can give her everything she possibly needs. Just like a pregnant woman who's eating for 2, you know, you make sure that they're getting the very best nutrients they can to be able to support the life that they're nurturing.